becoming a national point of discussion and debate and criticism from the White House. 14-year NFL wide receiver Anquan Boldin, along with Malcolm Jenkins of the Eagles. He's been at the forefront of the Players Coalition. It is good to have you here with this. I know the owners still have to vote to approve this, but when the money is dispersed and is in hand, specifically, what will it be doing?
Well, the money will be going towards different programs. We see it as three different pillars, one being police and community relations, another being education, and there's also a component for police accountability as well.
All right. I'm not going to ask you to speak for Malcolm Jenkins, but he is basically a co-leader of the coalition with you, has said he's been raising his fist in protest. Chris Long has put his hand on his shoulder in fraternity with him. And Malcolm has said now that this agreement has been reached, he no longer intends to protest. To those who would say there's a quid pro quo in this agreement, what would you say?
Well, I think, and like you said, I can't speak for Malcolm, but I think one of the things that was happening was guys were protesting in order to have a greater platform, to make their voices heard. And I think the NFL is listening to its players, and they're amplifying the voice of the players. They're giving players another platform to protest. They're giving players access to their legislators on the Hill. They're giving players access to funds, as well as their media to make their voices heard.
Would you expect protests to diminish, if not disappear, as the details of this become more widely known among the players?
I think if players understand the context behind it, I think you will see less players protest.
I'd like to ask you about Eric Reid and players who share his opinion, who have said they're parting company. They respect what you've done, but parting company with the Players Coalition, the group that you and Malcolm lead, because of what Eric has said, and he's on the 49ers, and he, of course, was with Colin Kaepernick and still is kneeling. He has said a lack of transparency, and that basically it's a shell game with the money, he told Slate, with money just being moved around by the NFL. How would you address those criticisms by Eric?
Well, I think, the thing that I think most people don't understand is that we all have the same end goal in mind, that we all want to see racial equality across the board. I think we want to see police accountability. I think we want to see our communities have better access. How we get there, I think there's a difference in opinions, but I think we all have the same common goal in mind. And I would like to, warn people that this isn't just something that happened overnight. I mean, we've been doing work for the last year and a half, 2 years. So it's not just a quick decision that we came to. Players have been active in their communities. I mean, we've been to Capitol Hill several times, speaking with both sides of the aisle, talking about criminal justice reform. We've been trying to bring both sides together. This is an issue that affects us as Americans, not just as an African-American community. And I think the NFL has listened to its players over the last couple of months. At least I can say from August to this point, no other league has done what the NFL is willing to do behind backing its players.
In about 15 seconds, to what extent, if any, has Colin Kaepernick been invited and been a part of any of this?
Colin has been invited. On several occasions. He's actually been on a couple of calls with the coalition, although he has decided to go a different route.
Okay.
He has been invited.
All right, but you wouldn't describe him as an active participant at this point?
Not at all.
Okay. Anquan, congratulations on closing the deal, which still has to be approved by the owners, and we'll talk to you down the road. I appreciate your time today, sir. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
All right. And so the owners will vote in March, guys. $90 million. This is, whether the money's coming from one pocket to the other, and that has been one criticism from Eric Reid, but this is a remarkable, astonishing commitment by the National Football League. Roger Goodell's role in this has been consistent. He's been in the middle of this.
Well, I think for all the criticism the NFL gets these days, this is not something they had to do. This seems like something that came from conversations that took place over a long period of time, as Anquan said, 2 years. But I thought that was a really interesting point right there that he mentioned. There is this sense now that Eric Reid and others are bolting from the coalition because of something that happened recently. And I think the point that we've heard from Malcolm Jenkins and Quan Bolt now is that, no, these things have been progressing over time, and this is where we are now. So I think for those out there who think there's some sort of nefarious intent on behalf of the people who are leading the coalition, you heard Anquan say it right there. They all have the same goal. Who leads it, how it's done, has a little bit of difference there, but I don't think that's any reason to knock what's been done here.
Yeah, but I think it is important to ask the questions about where is that money coming from within the NFL? Are they just shuffling it around? Are they investing new money? And also, is it going to be more of a public service announcement that serves as branding for the NFL in the same way as breast cancer awareness and the domestic violence campaign that the NFL? Those are fair questions to ask. The bigger question to me is this a starting point for the NFL players to get money, put it to places that they think will do good use, get more involved in the conversation on a meaningful level in terms of going to Capitol Hill, as we heard Anquan say? Or is this an ending point for them? Is it Colin Kaepernick took a knee and now we've seen this over the course of the last year and a half and this is the culmination of it and this is the punctuation mark on it? Or is this the opening of a door for them, these players on their own, to figure out where this money goes and to do more?
Look, you're going to twist yourself into knots if you're always, looking at everything from the perspective of the motivations and the PR value. This is a giant.
That's life. That's a story of life.
That's right. This is a, what is it? A $50 billion industry, something along those lines. Pro football. There are always going to be PR considerations. Optics are always going to be part of the equation. The idea of how the public perceives this, that's just baked in at this point. But the ends are what it's about. And if it is actually ending up doing good things, that's a pretty good start.
I mean, these guys have spent entire days, sometimes with cameras. We've done a couple of ride-alongs through Detroit. Anquan about 3 months ago. Malcolm Jenkins on Capitol Hill, but also in Harrisburg on days. Who's in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, following these guys through the corridors on criminal reform? And we do want to point out, by the way, Eric Reed, you're welcome at any point to come on this program. We've extended the invitation. Come back and give us your idea. But Goodell, his role here. Here's a guy who has been the pinata through his issues with Jerry Jones going back 3 years. He has been a consistent voice in the middle of this throughout and pushing for this.
That's right. And Roger Goodell has been beaten up and for a long time, and it's a strange position for a guy to be in who up until that point had been regarded as almost an unmitigated success. So he's looking for wins wherever he can find them.
And you know what, though? I don't think it makes him the winner here among his owners, because I think there's one thing that's missing in this discussion is guys are still going to do what they want to do. I think for people out there who think this is all going to end, I've said this before, I don't think there is an end, because you're talking about individuals with different motivations and different points to make,
and
they will continue to protest.
What does success look like if you're from the player's perspective? From day one, it's been people who are against these protests, like, actually do something. Actually do it. And now they get money, so they've done something.
All right. We got time for our villains. Tongue-in-cheek. Yours always tongue-in-cheek, Mr. Shap. Go ahead.
Well, I don't know if you guys noticed, but the other night, for the first time in his storied Hall of Fame, all-time great career, one LeBron James was ejected from an NBA game.
So he's your villain?
No. The villain is the man who had the gall, the audacity to eject
over here. Look at that.
Referee Fitzgerald. He explained his decision later. He said that LeBron had thrown an air punch and that there had been some foul language used. But come on. You have to give these guys a little more leeway, especially when you are royalty.
All right. I thoroughly endorse your villain.
All right, so
go ahead.
Yes, I'll kick it to you too. But my villain is actress Margot Robbie. She's the villain simply because she is playing Tanya Harding.
That's not fair.
Clearly the villain of the 90s. In this biopic.
This is an outstanding movie.
Probably has seen, so please. I have not seen it yet.
Villain of her own
but apparently she's phenomenal.
She does her own skating for the most part. She's an Australian.
Right.
It won Best in Show at the Key West Film Festival. I, Tanya, I totally endorse it.
Yes.
All right, we got breaking news from my villain. Before we get to the piece of tape, Jimbo Fisher is resigning from Florida State to take the job at Texas A&M, where Mike Sumlin has just been fired. Because my villain are the people and the ethic of the suppression of free speech around the Jimbo Fisher Coach Weekly radio show at Florida State. When you ask the question about loyalty, this is what happens to you.
Where's the loyalty to the program, Jimbo?
Push him out of there. Loyalty? Well, Jimbo had, maybe spurred by that disrespect for the First Amendment, Jimbo's leaving for College Station. Who's yours?
My villain is the law. And as a lawyer, I hate to say that, but Fletcher Cox is being sued by a man for something called alienation of affection in North Carolina. Allegedly, Fletcher Cox got together with the man's wife, and they had an affair, and the wife has now left the man. So, there's a law in North Carolina that allows you to sue if you break up somebody's marriage. That's what's happening. I have to say, there's a law that dates back to the 19th century. It's only in a handful of states.
Of affection?
Yes. Suing for 50 grand. There have been $1 million judgments on this thing. So I have to say, in this case, maybe we got to think about changing this law.
Makes you proud
as
to be a
unfortunate
lawyer.
as it seems if those allegations are true.
The villain is the law.
Just for one. Just as one time, guys.
It's a billable.
This makes it so that lawyers are less lovable and we are the most
It's a
lovable.
billable half hour, you know, at the Friday before. Next, our heroes from a pope of sports talk radio to a high school teacher.